Hello, Captain VFC here with another video. Hello there. This is me building the Airfix English Electric Lightning F2A gift stroke starter set. If you want to see what this looked like in out the box, what you get with it, then I did do a video of the unboxing as well, so check that out. Now, I'm reluctant to actually call this a full build, because there are just people who are better at it than I am, you know, with a close-up camera showing you gluing all the bits, and it's just too high quality for me. High quality is not something I do. So this is more of like an analysis video, like a build analysis video, or BAV for short. I'm just quickly going to pause the recording and just go back and amend my title card, because I've realised that BAV is a fucking amazing name for a video. Right, so I'm back. Sorry about that. I completely derailed my own video. Anyway, this is mostly stream footage of me building, kind of following the instructions, but I'm going to go over a few bits, a few differences, a few ways that I changed. For example, this is the gift set version, so it was supplied with just 6 paints. The instructions will, apart from a couple of printing errors, will tell you to use just those 6 paints. I, therefore, in front of me on the computer, had a copy of the other instructions for the normal release, which showed the full colours, kind of what Airfix were expecting it to be. The main difference comes with things like the interior. Rather than just being overall 64, there is some variation. There are some little differences. Here we see number 64. But the construction was very much modular, with the interior being very, very important, as this is a tricycle undercarriage aircraft. So I would build the interior as you'd expect, the cockpit. This also has the air intake, and then it's got the nozzle, which I think is like an air dispersal thing at the front. That is where the instructions tell you to put 4 grams worth of weight. So I used liquid gravity, which is neither liquid nor gravity. I mean, it's many, many solids, and they're just dense, but solid density is clearly not as good a name as liquid gravity. Weighed it came out at 4 grams, but either way I will assemble things like the wings and the tail and then do a dry fit. Now you can see here the interior, which I've painted a little red and yellow emergency tab on the ejector seat things. It has had a coat of wash after this point, but here it was just after painting. Anyway, as I scurry away, look at that, full speed building of a Lightning. I thought I'd go over some history, just a basic history of this aircraft. The English Electric Lightning is an icon of British aircraft. Entering service in 1960, it was built as an interceptor to defend the V bomber airfields, but would later be expected to counter the threat posed by Soviet bombers, and was able to take off, go bloody quick, to a ridiculous altitude, and back again in the time it takes some people to make a cup of tea. In fact, to this day, it remains the fastest British aircraft to enter production, with some variants capable of Mach 2.0. But being strapped into a rocket shooting up towards the outer atmosphere at twice the speed of sound was not without some shortcomings, and this version, the F2A, was a modification to counter one of those shortcomings: its range. The bulbous belly that this thing has was full of fuel and was there to give endurance for up to 2 hours, unless, of course, you hit that Go Fast button. The gift set comes with just one decal option, which is from 92 Squadron in West Germany, where Lightnings were deployed in the low-level interceptor role during the 1970s, until being replaced with the Phantom. Now, the Lightning was finally taken out of RAF service in 1988 to be replaced by Jaguars and Tornadoes, but stayed around a bit longer elsewhere in the world. There are tons of these things still around. You sort of just fall into an aircraft museum anywhere in the UK and there's probably at least one Lightning there somewhere. I know I say that in that sort of tone that suggests that's not a good thing. It is a fantastic aircraft, but it is one that growing up I kind of ignored a little bit, just I think because of its it's just the fact it's so bloody common. Also, it was a jet. Airfix have released this as the F6 version as well. I'm not going to go into the full breakdown of the details, but basically the tail and the belly kind of restrict what options you get with this. As in options for marks and stuff. So here we've got just the wings being assembled. Like I say, I did this in a modular way, so the fuselage was sort of clamped together, holding in all of the bits of the interior to make sure that it was set properly and wasn't going to fall out of alignment, even if I didn't actually apply any glue at that point. It was just to make sure everything would go together nicely. And then you plop the wings on, you slam the tail in, and you just balance it, and if all goes well, it won't end up sitting on its arse. Plenty of Tamiya extra thin, plenty of clamp action on the wings, and this was a good one. Then, of course, it is a case of doing an actual wet fit, gluing everything to one side of the fuselage and sticking the other half together. I did make a couple of mistakes at this point. There were some holes near the nose that I assumed were for cannon, and therefore I painted the interior expecting you to see it, and then actually looked at the instructions where you just stick a little bit over the top of it. So that was a waste of a tiny amount of black paint. You can even see it there, little black paint. Honestly, it's a joke. Everything is weathered with this Citadel's, is it Balsacanum grey? I don't even know how you bloody say it. They look like a grey washy stuff. It works. I prefer it over black paint. I've also just noticed here, you can see a notable error that I made, which I didn't realise until afterwards. The air deflector, the big pointy bit inside the middle, should actually be a different shade of grey. I believe it should be an interior grey rather than the body colour grey. Naturally, as I've said, the instructions reduce the number of paints needed to 6, so I didn't necessarily know this at the time. And it was only afterwards that I thought, I just can't be asked. It will do, it's green. And even on the back of the box, actually, it shows that the cone is the same colour as the body on one side, but when you look at another picture of it, it's clearly the other diagram that they've used from the normal release because it is a paler green, which actually leads on to the inconsistencies I mentioned with the instructions. They talk about 50% yellow, 50% red on the ejector seat handles in the cockpit, but of course they don't provide those colours. They've clearly, not yellow, sorry, it was black and red, isn't it? I think there's some yellow in there somewhere, but they don't provide those colours, and clearly they've not edited their own instructions right. They've just sort of overlooked it. And that's fine, it happens. It's not the end of the world. At least the actual kit goes together following their instructions, unlike some other companies. We're now sort of moving on to final construction. Like I say, this was modular. The weight turned out to be perfect. Airfix's 4 grams is exactly what I put in the exact location, and it worked a treat. It may be quite a large aircraft, but there's actually not that much room to fit weight because it has the intake at the front. So it's a big hole. So really that nose cone, which leads straight into the wheel well, is kind of the only place. Anywhere else you're going to see it. Now, I hadn't actually realised at this point that the kit also comes with the little cover, the air intake cover that you often see when they're on the ground or in museums. I guess as a last resort, if you really don't have anything dense enough like that liquid gravity, because, even though it's perfect in my instance, it's still a very small space that you've actually got to put the weight in, but you could just make it with that cover on, and then you've got the entire front of the aircraft to put weight in. Weight to your heart's content, if necessary. Anyway, once the aircraft was fully assembled, I did not use any filler on this, mostly because I'm lazy, but also it doesn't really need it. When you brush paint, you tend to get a slightly thicker coat of paint in things like grooves anyway, and I find that works as self-leveling. Everything was sprayed in red primer. The red may seem like an odd choice, but I can sum it up very, very easily. It's all I had. So I sprayed it with red primer. Done. That's all you need. And then the entire top of the aircraft was brush painted in Tamiya XF27. I did look up online what sort of colour they would be, whether they were a different shade of green to standard RAF green. Honestly, I never really got a solid answer. It was all opinions, with people saying, yes, I served on them in Germany, they were definitely the same colour, and others saying, no, the records would suggest otherwise. So I chose XF27 because it is a different shade of green to what I normally use, and that helps me because I like the aircraft to just look a little bit different. It's a personal thing. I was actually quite disappointed with the paint. It never really went on very well. It kind of felt a bit patchy. After, I think, 3 coats, I wet sanded it to try and smooth it out a little. It didn't wear very well, so it ended up taking off some of the paint on some of the raised wing detail in particular. So then I had to go over that and paint it again. You can also see that the cover that I mentioned is visible at this stage, so I had worked it out and I'd used it as a paint mask, and as you'll see in the final photos, I never even went over the red. I quite liked that primer red as a colour for the air intake. So yeah, that was helpful. Anyway, it was masked off and brush painted with chrome. I've forgotten what number it is. It's the one that I always use, and therefore you'd expect me to be able to remember the number. But no, apparently not. But it's the Tamiya chrome. And again, once it was masked, that was brush painted over everything. The interior, the inside of the wheel wells, the detail inside there, are also painted in this colour, which is why they were not masked prior to spraying primer. I have tried to work out what colour the actual wheel wells of Lightnings would be. As far as I can see, they were aluminium, and they were given a protective lacquer, which gives them a sort of white wash effect, so sort of a almost pale grey. It still looks silver or aluminium, but it doesn't look metallic. And so, again, you're not going to see it until the end, but I also gave it a coat of like a really thin white wash, just to add a little bit of that lacquer representation. There it is. Did you see what number that was? No, I didn't either. I wasn't paying attention. I'm going to say 19. I don't think it is, but I'm going to say XF19. If anyone knows what XF19 is and wants to tell me how wrong I am, please comment below. Once again, with the chrome, I had the same problem as I did with the green. The first coat went on absolutely fine. The second coat, if it's not 100% dry by the time you start painting the second one, it starts acting like a paint stripper and removing the first coat. It kind of reminds me of enamel paints. Now, some enamel paints are absolutely fine, but some of them take a week to dry, and if you dare, even though it looks dry and it feels dry, if you dare put a second coat on it, it's just going to strip everything off and you have a lot of work to do. And this paint kind of works like that, and it is something I've addressed. I've stopped using this as a main colour. I will use it for undercarriage legs, and I do find that it is useful to always have an array of metallic-y, silvery paints available. Gives you a bit more of a varied colour should you need it. So we're now going to be moving towards the decals. Like I say, this one is the only option with the kit, so naturally that's the one I was going to do. They went on without any problem whatsoever. I did give it a coat of gloss varnish beforehand. I don't think you need to do this. I personally like doing that. I think you get a more consistent finish. But they went on with absolutely no problems until... Dun, dun, dun! It's got some black lines all over the belly. It could go from one side to the other, all around the bottom. And some of them were missing from the painting instructions, and the rest of them were just a bit difficult. So, sucks. And then after that, we're just going to put on the pitot tube, which is what I assume it is anyway, on the front and on the nose. I do not use the horrible spindly plastic one. I use a bit of guitar string, and I cut it to length, glued it on. So you'll see that in a little final showcase that we've got coming up. And that about wraps it up. So I give this a solid yes out of 10. In fact, a Mac 2.0 out of 10. And not going to lie, part of this was just to get a badge from Mod 6510 Models, who I'm sure you all know. So you're going to see a little sneaky bit of that as well as we now go into this final showcase. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching. Obey the algorithm, and goodbye.